So I've been Chief Exec here at Stone Sussex Healthcare Trust for about just under 9 years, so 9 years soon actually. And I came in October 2010, well, September 2010 actually, to really think with the SHA what the SHA would do with the hospital. The hospital contextually was in quite a lot of trouble. It had, at the time, had the biggest loan in the country, had a £56 million loan. It was the worst performer on every quality indicator. And so it was in pretty bad shape. And I think, so some of you who've been around for a while will recognise that one of the problems that we had here way back then was we'd had 5 chief executives in 7.
Line muted.
When I arrived, there was effectively no structure and no organisational memory. We were in the world of PCTs then. There were 4 PCTs with the trust, with four different type block contracts back in the day. So it was all a bit difficult and a bit tricky. Bit of context about the hospital. So on the first slide, a bit about us. We have 4,500 staff. We're a busy emergency centre. We have a huge population that we serve. It's about 535,000 people that we look after, and we've got about 740 beds across the trust. If you go to slide 2, you'll see that, just to comment on what I was already saying about our overperformance. One of the problems that we got into, but way back, certainly when I arrived in later 2010. To my kind of amazement, I'd been here a couple of weeks and I got a phone call from Panorama. Some of you around might have even watched the film, to say that the Panorama had been filming in the hospital for about 3 months in one patient's room. And the program was all about a frail elderly gentleman who'd had dementia and received very, very poor care. So there was a lot of time spent dealing with a lot of issues. In 2011, because of the national support that the hospital was requiring, which really was understanding of versions of support, really, the hospital ended up having 11 clinical reviews. That's one every 6 weeks. And they range from the deanery then, looking to remove all the doctors from A&E, or take away all the trainees from medicine, to the care community, to the Strategic Health Authority, who did 2 reviews, to the PCTs, who did their own reviews, the Department of Health, who did its own review. So it was a very testing time during 2011, as we were trying to put back infrastructure into the organisation and trying to rebuild confidence and credibility, not just with our own staff, but with our local community as well. Because the local press, the local papers, the national press had a lot to say about what wasn't going well in the hospital. And I remember one of my earliest memories really was the local MP asking the Prime Minister for my resignation in 2011, and I'd been here for 3 or 4 months. So it was a bit of a testing time, really. So we kind of thought about what we needed to do. I went out and actively sought some individuals from GE Healthcare, actually, not because it was GE Healthcare, it could have been anybody, but the individuals were really skilled at thinking through clinical leadership, what it looked like, how we would get there, what the journey would be like, what the destination would look like, and the sorts of systems and processes that we needed to put in place. So through the work that we did over 2 years with GE Healthcare, we spent a lot of time putting in clinical structures, clinical leadership structures, and we made our chiefs of service part of our executive team. Now, of course, that's all good, but you've really got to give people real accountability and real responsibility with real resources. So we spent a lot of time working with the team and getting them to be comfortable with those new accountability, with the new accountability framework. We moved away from things like appraisals to achievement reviews, and we did that right through the organisation, from consultants to healthcare assistants to porters to cleaners. In 2014, we were the first trust in the country to be inspected under that new framework the CQC had put in place, and we were really pleased that at that time we were rated good in all domains except outpatient, where we were rated requires improvement. So we'd come a long way, but we knew that there was more to do. We were disappointed with being rated good, so requires improvement for outpatients, but we knew we had a lot of work to do. We had, and I don't, this is familiar to some of you, our notes, so we're in Red Hill, Surrey. Our notes were stored in Southampton. That's about a 2-hour drive away. They'd been there for 20 years. There'd been no destruction policy ever implemented. So we ended up having to move just under 1 million sets of notes from Southampton to have them stored more locally, to recatalog them, to redestroy them. And we had to build a new facility at the cost of £3 million so we could really redesign and re-engineer the way that we provided medical notes to our consultants for outpatients, because it was a clinical risk. We had so many sets of temporary notes, we didn't know what investigations the patients had had. So we've done a lot of work on medical records. We're set now, as we roll the clock forward now to today, to be ready for digitization. And I think I'm very pleased to say we've probably got one of the best medical record departments in the country. So I could tell you that we don't make up more than 1 or 2 sets of temporary notes a week, and we were making up about 400. So we've come a long way, we've got more to do. In 2015, we were, I think we had a bit of a crossroads. We got to good for our CQC rating, so we knew our quality was improving, but we had more to do. We knew our performance around the constitutional standard was really good, and we were starting to be a trust that had moved from significant deficit into significant surplus. However, one of the things for us, and personally for me, was, well, how do you get from good to outstanding, and what does that journey look like, and how complex is it going to be? So we were really fortunate that Jeremy Hunt at the time decided that he wanted to invest money with Virginia Mason in the US, and identified 5 trusts through a very complex process, actually. 70 trusts applied, or 67, whatever the number was, and 5 of us were selected to work with BMI. And the partnership with BMI was a very ambitious program, and really it was about the work that Jeremy Hunt will be famous for many things, but one of the things I will admire him for was his relentless pursuit of improvements, particularly around patient safety. And one of the things that inspired him when he spent quite a lot of time with Gary Kaplan out in Seattle was how they had become America's hospital of the decade because of the work they'd done around patient safety. So we were lucky enough to get onto that program. It's very intense. Our clinicians work with their clinicians. We have joint arrangements where we fly back and forward to Seattle. We have mentorship from colleagues out in Seattle and from the Institute. And we've done, a lot of learning over, we're in the last year of the program, so nearly 5 years, a lot of learning that we've done together. And I think what we've seen from that is a huge improvement beyond, I think, what we could have expected. And part of that, I think, is around developing a climate and a culture for continuous improvement. And if you look at some of the stuff that we've done around social interactions, it is really interesting that when you start to to create and embed that climate of improvement, that actually your social networks, social interactions within your organisation and outside really start to improve on a scale that you'd never thought possible. So the program for us and the work we've been doing is about getting our clinical staff, the people who actually do the work, to improve the work. Respect for people is really important in the work that we do and in our organisation. And it means that if you are a consultant coming to this hospital, you are told that you will have to do a Lean for Leaders program. It is in your contract. If you don't want to do that, we won't appoint you. We have no problems in getting consultant staff in this organisation anymore. And within the next 3 months, we will probably be fully recruited to nursing staff for the first time in our history. We get a lot of coaching, a lot of mentoring, learning to understand really that failure is a part of learning. And for me personally, that journey has become really comfortable with what I didn't know. And it's a difficult thing to say because everybody expects senior leaders in organisations across the NHS to know everything. And the fact is we don't. About small-scale testing, it's not big changes. It's small incremental changes across the organisation, and that's why it takes time. It takes time to do this. It's not something I don't think you can go out and do in a big bang approach, and then you come in to the organisation 3 weeks later and it's all changed. We have trust-wide value streams that are developed by the staff. They frame the problems and they build and generate the solutions. We run 2 rapid improvement workshops a month, and that means that we take anything between 10 and 30 people out of their job for a whole week, frame problems and build solutions, and then we work together to implement them. And what we've seen through that process is a huge clinical engagement. And people are really proud to do things on a very small scale, and that benefit patients back in their area. We haven't focused on money. What we have seen is that productivity and financial benefits drop out of this in a completely and utterly entirely different way. We've been in surplus here now for many years, about 3 or 4 years now, consistently. And if you look at the model hospital data and GERF, and if you look at reference costs, our reference costs here are 83. So we're the most efficient trust on the national metrics in the country. You'll see a triangle. That's our strategy on a page. That's embedded right across the organisation, and every ward will have that. But below that, they will have things which are more pertinent to their wards. So on a ward, might have at a point in time a problem with urosepsis or sepsis or infection control or falls or something like that, and the staff will be able to tell you where their priority areas are, what they're working on, and more importantly, what they're doing to make those improvements. And it doesn't matter if you are in a clinical area or an admin area or a booking area, you'll have one of these triangles, and it will mean something to those staff. So a lot of our staff in all areas have huddles in the morning, safety huddles, and they'll go through things for their areas based on the metrics and things that they're looking at, which are particular and peculiar to their area of work. I'd say that Kaizen is, as a slide there talks about turnaround versus Kaizen. Kaizen, as you know, is continuous improvement. It's very different than turnaround. So turnaround's a quick fix. This is a very slow burn. It takes time. It takes energy. It takes persistence. We have to allow people to frame those problems and help build the solutions. And at the end of the day, we've all got extremely clever and bright people working in our organisation. So why would we tell them what to do? Why would we not provide the time, the resources for them to do the things that we're all here for, which is to improve the care and treatment we provide for patients and our staff. Leaders know solutions in a turnaround, don't they? In the work that we do, leaders find out what they don't know, as I said before. They're fixed plans against what we try and do, which is flexible responding to the issues identified by staff, because they'll all be different and it changes. And we're looking to embed things. consistently. And then, you know, we don't solve problems, we frame problems. We get our staff to help build those solutions because that generates ownership. And it's interesting as I look back now over almost 5 years of the work that we've done, particularly with VMI, you know, in the early days, you would kind of struggle to think about, well, people want to know what we're doing, but what would you show them and how would you describe it? Now, it's almost right across the organization. So it's very easy to say, oh, we'll just go there today, or we'll go to that huddle, or we'll go to that workplace. The information is generated and used locally to support improvements. So all about the stuff, we're very data rich, and certainly I've found you know, that we're very data rich. We weren't great at using the data in a very practice way. And the focus is on patients and staff. You know, so for us, it's a bit about, if I look at the performance, you'll see the performance is yeah, it's pretty good. We've got some areas of improvement, particularly around cancer rates. Just done a big piece of work we have 4 CT scanners in my hospital and 2 MRI scanners, so much like many of you will have. We've done a big piece of work looking at improving early access to CT and diagnostics for cancer patients. We've done that piece of work, but as a second order issue, really, the teams, the radiographers, the radiologists, and the surgeons, and the admin staff and the porters collectively who worked on this, then kind of said to themselves, why are we doing a full blood screen on every patient that has a CT scan? Now, 75% of our patients don't have a blood test before a CT scan. Right? Better patient experience, better use of radiographer time, and takes the workload, some of the workload away from our pathology teams. So those are the sorts of things, you know, I can give you sort of loads of examples. But if you look at the final slide, which is really quality versus cost, sorry, the diagrams are a bit small, but I've already commented on our weighted activity and reference cost. What we've actually seen is, if you look at the square in the middle, which is hard to see, I know, is that we've actually been able to improve quality at the same time as reducing cost. So I think, you know, for us, it's work that we continue to do. Where do we see the future? Well, we want to major much more on patient safety. We've done a lot of work on patient safety, but we think we've got more to do. And we want to be the best place to work in the country. And I think what we've done, because I think if you've got a workforce who feels like that, then you know, no doubt in my mind, happy staff give much better care, and you get much better outcomes for patients. So that's our bit of a journey. I hope that it resonates with some of you. We're still on it. We've still got a lot more to do, but it is really, really exciting about some of the stuff that we're starting to do and see now. So I'll pause there.